Hey guys, what is going on, and welcome to the very first episode of my brand new FIFA 21 series, which is going to be a realistic career mode with Burnley. Yes, very excited for this new project, and the clue is in the name. In this career mode, I want to start off the entire series by straight away saying the emphasis of this project is not going to be about winning as much as we possibly can in the quickest amount of time possible, nor about signing all the traditional high potential wonder kids that everyone's aware of. The emphasis of this save is mainly going to be on keeping the series as realistic as possible. Now that's going to be very difficult to do. Obviously, anyone that's played this game for longer than more than one season will know the game can get unrealistic very quickly due to crazy AI transfers and the market being so strange and unpredictable. And also sometimes form of teams can also be really wild as well. But I'll do my best to keep the series as realistic as possible. Really hope you guys enjoy it. It should be a lot of fun. Now we've chosen Burnley from the Premier League, of course, as I take over from Sean Dyche at Turf Moor, and it should be a really fun save as well. One thing I haven't done so far in any saves I've done in FIFA 21 career modes are journeyman saves, and I wouldn't be against at some point moving on from Burnley, though of course that won't be for a while, I'm sure. Now, Burnley in the game, as you can see, they start off with a budget of around 25 to 30 million pounds after wage budget alterations. Their objectives in the first season, not playing continental football, is simply to finish in mid-table of the Premier League and reach the last 16 of the FA Cup. And as you see the team here as well, they're a bit of an old school team. They play 4-4-2. It's not a terrible team. It is a 4-star side, but it is still one of the weaker teams in the Premier League. However, with Burnley, what we're going to be doing in the first season, again, despite having a pretty decent budget, is not looking to change the team that much, and also making sure we stick true to what Sean Dyche has been doing with his Burnley side over the years, which is mostly signing players that are either British or Irish, relatively close to home, or also players that have played and had experience in the Premier League before, or perhaps players in the lower tiers of the English Football League as well. Now, one thing I encourage you guys to do after you watch this episode is listen to the Sean Dyche episode in the High Performance podcast. Now, I don't listen to as many podcasts as I probably should, but my favourite podcast is the High Performance podcast. It's presented by the BT Sport presenter Jake Humphrey. He also has a professor with him, Damien Hughes, as well, and they have guests on, professional athletes, high performers, the clues in the name, and they give you their tips, if you will, on how they've achieved a very high performance and highly successful life. Sean Dyche's episode with Jake Humphrey on that podcast was absolutely fascinating, as he talked about how he set his Burnley team up, how he's managed to maintain Premier League football at Turf Moor for so many years, despite the fact when they first came up, a lot of people tipped them to go straight back down. It's a really interesting episode, and Sean talks about his transfer policy with the team as well. Again, mostly looking at players where his recruitment team don't go too far afield. They mostly stick quite close to home. Again, for players that are either British or Irish, or of course playing in the Football League. It's a really great episode. He talks a lot about professionalism in that episode, and it's definitely worth listening to. It's one of my favourite episodes of what is my favourite podcast. So with the transfer policy with Burnley, you would have seen so many players have their deals up come the end of the year. I have rejected quite a few bids here for Tarkowski, Loughton and McNeil. I want to keep all those guys here, though I did accept a bid here for Matej Vidra, and I rejected this bid for Kevin Long as well, as Vidra did indeed go to Bajik Shahir for 2.85 million. Now, in terms of transfers we bring in with Burnley, again, the most important thing is that we keep them realistic. The signings are realistic, but also for outgoings as well. Now, this is quite interesting. Phil Barsley I put on the transfer list, 35 years old, 73 rated right back up to Matt Loughton. I did want a new right back as well, but I rejected this bid here from Cadiz, and the main reason why is because I also want to make sure that the players' destinations for where we sell them to is relatively realistic as well. Phil Barsley has spent his entire career attached to a club that have played in England. He has, of course, had loan spells in Scotland, and I think he also went out on loan to Belgium once when he was a youngster on the books of Manchester United as well, but I don't think he's realistically going to sign for Cadiz on a permanent transfer in the twilight of his career. So the same goes for signings as it does for sales as well. We look to bring in players who, again, are realistic, or what you would consider more realistic signings. So as you see here, the first signing we made was Jack Stacey from recently relegated Bournemouth. This to me kind of made sense. Of course, he's not the highest potential player in the game, not the highest potential right back we could have signed, but at 24 years old, 73 rated, again, an English player that spent a lot of time playing in the Football League and then, of course, in the Premier League with Bournemouth till their relegation last year. This one makes sense. A player that was relegated from the Premier League last year, coming back to play top-flight football, that is a relatively realistic sign, or at least I'd like to think so. I do want to say as well, sometimes I will get this wrong. Sometimes I will sign a player and you might think it's quite unrealistic. It probably wouldn't happen in real life, but all I can do is do my best. To me, that did seem quite realistic, and again, that is the emphasis of the project. Yes, we could have signed someone like Max Aarons, for example, with far higher potential for around the same transfer fee and possible weekly wage as well, but it wouldn't have been quite as realistic with Max Aarons staying at Norwich, signing a new contract extension, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the clue is in the name. I won't always be able to get it right, but I'll do my very, very best. I thought that first sign was quite realistic there, as I thought was this one as well. Nathaniel Chalobah, who actually spent time on loan at Burnley back when he was a youngster for Chelsea, since moved on to Watford. Again, another recently relegated side going down to the Championship. We snap him up. 74 rated holding midfielder, and again, we could have signed players with more potential for around the same transfer fee, but I think this signing was relatively realistic here, and I'm going to try and train Chalobah to play as a centre-half in this team as well. In his younger days in his playing career, he did spend some time playing centre-half. He's been phased up the pitch now to play holding mid, but I'm going to retrain him to play centre-half in this team as a long-term successor for Ben Mee, the captain, to play alongside James Tarkowski. So yeah, relatively realistic, I'd say. And again, real briefly on the sales as well, you see this bid here from Bournemouth coming in for Phil Barsley after we signed Stacey from them. It is a lower offer than the one that Cadiz put in. Unfortunately, as you'll see, it does indeed fall through. But again, because it's more realistic, I don't mind if the fee is lower. The most important thing to me is making sure that the players move on to clubs who realistically you could possibly see happening at some point, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility as well. Again, realism can be quite subjective, especially when you're playing a simulation game like FIFA Career Mode due to the crazy AI transfer market, but for the most part, all I can do is do my best, and I'd say it's more realistic for him to go somewhere like Bournemouth than Cadiz, for example. We did sell Eric Peters though to Cagliari, our Dutch left back, and we had another bid here for Phil Barsley, another Spanish team coming in. Deportivo Alaves wanted him, but again I turned it down because whilst I'd rather get Barsley's salary off the books, it's not realistic for him to go there. So I'm not going to sell him there. I'd rather wait until I can sell him to a club which, again, is more realistic of a destination for him to go to. And I was wanting a new left back as well to play as a replacement for Eric Peters. I had 3 names on the list, and I thought this one seemed quite realistic to me. Rico Henry of Brentford. Once again, of course, the Bees missed out on promotion last year in the playoff final, losing to Fulham. And because Brentford wanted a right back in Matt Loughton, I thought it wouldn't be unrealistic to give them Phil Barsley instead, plus 6 million in exchange for Rico Henry. In the end, we had to pay, I think it was 7.25 million plus Phil Barsley. But it's because they wanted Matt Loughton, they were in the market for a right back. I didn't think it would be unrealistic to give them another right back instead of Matt Loughton, who's become our second choice, with Barsley becoming third choice. So again, it's I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's all about trying to keep it as realistic as possible. If Brentford didn't inquire about Matt Loughton, I wouldn't have included Phil Barsley in the deal. But because they wanted a right back, I was willing to give them Barsley as opposed to Loughton. In the end, Henry did sign 7.25 mil as Barsley goes the other way. And again, I'd say a relatively realistic signing. Another player outside the Premier League playing Championship football. Burnley have signed quite a few players from the Football League since their time in the Premier League. So sticking to that transfer philosophy of British and Irish players, mostly spending time playing in the English Football League and just outside the Premier League. And Henry became our third signing. Absolutely rapid left back as well. 91 pace. He's got some decent stamina. I'm going to try and get his work rates to high as well with 90 plus stamina too, because I absolutely love that combination there. 90 for stamina and high work rates on a wide player is just absolutely superb. So yeah, Henry became our third signing in this team to start the window off. We also just had a bid there for Ashley Barnes and Bayer Leverkusen, because again, whilst I don't think he'll be a regular striker for us for many years to come, and he's out of contract come the end of the season, can't see Ashley Barnes going to the Bayer Arena, to be honest. So of course I rejected that one for realism. And also I made one final signing on loan as well. Reece Nelson, who's had very little game time at Arsenal. In fact, there's been a lot of talk and he will be going out on loan next season due to the lack of game time he's got this year under Mikel Arteta, and we loaned him in on a 1-year deal. 72 rated right winger. He'll be an impact sub in this team for the most part. I don't think he'll start many games, but he will get more game time than at Arsenal. Actually, there's been a lot of people on social media criticising Arteta Arteta for not giving Nelson much game time at all this season. In fact, he's barely played. I think he's played less than 90 minutes of Premier League football at the time I'm recording this commentary. Maybe that's changed now, but he's not had much game time under Arteta this year. He needs first team football. He's going to get more of it at Burnley. Certainly more opportunities here at Turf Moor on a 1-year loan deal. And again, I could have signed him on a permanent deal, but I didn't think that would be realistic. A very good young talent at the Emirates Stadium going to Burnley on a permanent deal for a cheap transfer, yeah, not quite as realistic as a loan deal would be. Still, for the first game of the season, as you can see, we had Everton here away at Goodison Park. Once again, I will be playing the difficulty on Ultimate, but I will say this, I will be adjusting the sliders on a regular basis this season, because we don't just want realistic transfers in this series, we also want realistic results and a realistic type of progression from a team as well. So I will play on Ultimate, but for games where we expect more of a challenge, I'll increase the AI's difficulty and increase the AI sliders for things like, for lower shot error, for example, lower pass error, higher shot power, higher pace, for example. And yeah, I'll make it more of a challenge for me, as it should be, as it would be reflected like in real life as well. So we had a Toffees away from home, having a great season on the Carlo Ancelotti this season, and starting off the game we fell behind early on. There were 5 minutes to go, still trailing by 1. Gylfi Sigurdsson came off the bench to replace James Rodriguez and banged in 2 goals right towards the end in what was, unfortunately, a very poor start to the season. 3-0 away at Goodison Park, but again, not beyond the realms of possibility. I think Burnley actually won here in real life this season, so this result you could say is slightly unrealistic, but very difficult challenge for me in that one, but it's exactly what I want this season. I want more realistic results, tougher games. That one certainly was there in a 3-0 loss, but either way, pretty pleased how I start the season off. Again, I'm going to try and get the series as realistic as I possibly can. I know that will be a challenge, but I'll do my very, very best. And again, please do bear in mind that sometimes I might call things slightly wrong in terms of realism, but that's going to happen from time to time. I can't always call it right, but I'll do my very, very best. That's the series opener today of the Realistic Career Mode, guys. Hope you have enjoyed. If you have, then please do drop a like. Much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you for the next episode of the Realistic Career Mode very soon.